Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Brothers and sisters, the Muslim Parliament draws its authority from the Holy Quran. As such, a copy of the Holy Quran will be symbolically placed on this platform. Then the House is in session. The Quran will now be brought in a procession into the chamber.
Allahümme salli ala seyyidina Muhammedin nebiyil ümmiyi ve ala alihi ve sahbihi ve sellim. Allahümme salli ala seyyidina Muhammedin nebiyil ümmiyi ve ala alihi ve sahbihi ve sellim. Allahümme salli ala seyyidina Muhammedin nebiyil ümmiyi ve ala alihi ve sahbihi ve sellim. Allahu Ekber, Allahu Ekber. La ilahe illallah, Allahu Ekber. Allahu Ekber ve lillahil hamd. Allahu Ekber, Allahu Ekber. La ilahe illallah, Allahu Ekber. Allahu Ekber ve lillahil hamd. Allahu Ekber, Allahu Ekber. La ilahe illallah, Allahu Ekber. Allahu Ekber ve lillahil hamd.
Brothers and sisters, let us now reiterate the greatness of Allah together. Takbir.
Allahu Akbar.
Takbir.
Allahu Akbar.
Takbir.
Allahu Akbar.
Bismillah. I now request Imam Ayadin Tari to recite from the Holy Quran. Imam Ayadin Tari, please. Yes, he's there.
فبما رحمة من الله لنت لهم ولو كنت فظا غليظ القلب لانفضوا من حولك فاعف عنهم واستغفر لهم وشاورهم في الأمر فإذا عزمت فتوكل على الله إن الله يحب المتوكلين. إن ينصركم الله فلا لكم وإن يخذلكم فمن ذا الذي ينصركم من بعده وعلى الله فليتوكل المؤمنون. وما كان لنبي أن يغل ومن يغل يأت بما غل يوم القيامة ثم توفى كل نفس ما كسبت وهم لا يظلمون. أفمن اتبع رضوان الله كمن باء بسخط من الله ومأواه جهنم وبئس المصير. هم درجات عند الله والله بصير بما يعملون. لقد من الله على المؤمنين إذ بعث فيهم رسولا من أنفسهم يتلو عليهم آياته ويزكيهم ويعلمهم الكتاب والحكمة وإن كانوا من قبل لفي ضلال مبين. أولما أصابتكم مصيبة قد أصبتم مثليها قلتم أنى هذا قل هو من عند أنفسكم إن الله على كل شيء قدير. صدق الله العظيم. الفاتحة.
Jazakallah Aydin Tari. Now I request Khaja Abdul Mutakabbir to give us a translation, English language translation of the passage just recited.
I thought it took longer than that.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. I seek refuge in Allah from the accursed and the rejected shaitan. In the name of Allah, most gracious, most merciful. It is part of the mercy of Allah that thou dost deal gently with them. Wert thou severe or harsh-hearted, they would have broken away from thee. Not so pass over their faults and ask for Allah's forgiveness for them, and consult them in affairs of moment. Then when thou hast taken a decision, put thy trust in Allah, for Allah loves those who put their trust in Him. If Allah helps you, none can overcome you. If He forsakes you, who is there after that can help you? In Allah, then, let the believers put their trust. No prophet could ever be false to his trust. If any person is so false, he shall, on the day of judgment, restore what he misappropriated. Then shall every soul receive its due, whatever it earned, and none shall be dealt with unjustly. Is the man who followed the good pleasure of Allah like the man who draws on himself the wrath of Allah, and whose abode is hell, a woeful refuge? There are in varying grades in the sight of Allah, and Allah well sees all that they do. Allah did confer a great favor on the believers when He was sent from among them, an apostle from among themselves, rehearsing unto them the signs of Allah, sanctifying them and instructing them in scripture and wisdom, while before that they had been in manifest error. What, when a single disaster smites you, although you smote your enemies with one twice as great, do you say, whence is this? Say to them, it is from yourselves, for Allah hath power over all things. Sadaqallahul Azim. Surely Allah speaks the truth.
Jazakallah. Brothers and sisters, the inauguration of the Muslim Parliament of Great Britain marks the beginning of a new era for the British Muslims, an era in which they will no longer be a community of meek, ostracized community. Hitherto, the British Muslims have endured stoically the ridicules, humiliations, and character assassination by the misguided and prejudiced ones amongst the media, politicians, and other molders of public opinion. Prompted by malicious propaganda and emboldened by the forbearance of the Muslim community, the powers that be have been perpetrating injustices on the Muslims. But all this could not go on forever. Now, the continued insensitivity and arrogance of their tormentors have forced the British Muslims to transform themselves into a political community determined to assert its identity, defend its rights, resist the attempts to take them for granted, and counter the malicious propaganda on them. The Muslim Parliament of Great Britain is intended to serve as a motive force for this determination. As such, it will reflect the collective public will of the Muslims and will spearhead their quest for equality with fellow Britons, equality in rights as citizens of Great Britain and of opportunities to acquire, develop, and exploit skills for progress in worldly matters. This Parliament will also serve as a beacon for the Muslims in the search for moral excellence and spiritual progress. And it will strengthen the fraternal links of the Muslim community of Great Britain with the larger and global community of Islam, the Muslim Ummah. This indeed is among the rare moments in the history of this community. For this is the point in time when the British Muslims embark upon their journey of self-realization, initiate organized efforts to defend their rights, and adopt the polity of self-help through consultation and cooperation. Muslims are a people committed to excellence at all levels of human endeavor, and this Parliament will facilitate their efforts in this direction by creating a socio-political environment conducive to spiritual development, moral fulfillment, and worldly success for all. By doing so, we will be complying with the demands of God's law, obedience to which is paramount for all Muslims. And God's law also requires the Muslims to honor and obey the laws of the land in which they live, so long as this does not entail disobedience to God and His Messenger Muhammad, divine blessings and peace be upon him. Within this perimeter, the Muslim Parliament of Great Britain will honor the laws made by the Parliament at Westminster and will encourage the Muslims to discharge their duties as citizens of this country. The British Muslims have an immense potential for accelerating the development of this country and enriching the lives of our people. This potential, however, is being inhibited by the vicious circle created by the interests of and prejudices of the molders of public opinion and vested interests of the powers that be. The success of this Parliament in accomplishing its mission while facilitating the progress of the British Muslims will also benefit this country and our people by removing the inhibition and releasing their immense potential in the service of the nation. We hope that the molders of public opinion and the helmsmen of this great country will rise above prejudices and vested interests and will refrain from frustrating our efforts with unfair comments, injustices, and excesses, and allow the British Muslims to play their part in the progress and development of this country and enrichment of our people. Now I call upon Dr. Kalim Siddiqui to give us a speech.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم نحمده ونصلي على رسوله الكريم. Mr. Speaker, history, it is said, repeats itself. Perhaps it does. But the inauguration of the Muslim Parliament of Great Britain today is an event truly without parallel. We are responsible, Mr. Speaker, for the most original and innovative piece of social engineering in modern Britain. After today, British society will not be the same again. Nevertheless, this Parliament has very deep roots in history. The whole of the history of Islam and the vast political experience of Muslims have gone into its conception and creation. This Parliament also represents the fusion caused by the injection of the political culture of Islam into a hostile Western environment. This fusion has generated a great deal of new energy in the otherwise depressed state of the Muslim minority in this country. The fallout might enrich too great if disparate political cultures and traditions here. The Muslim community that is now a permanent part of the British society has suffered all the hardships of a migrant people. Within the last 3 years, an attempt has been made to disparage and demoralize us. Even more importantly, Mr. Speaker, an attempt was made to open Islam and the Prophet of Islam up to the Soho culture of London's nightlife. We have beaten back both these attacks. Under the most intense pressure ever applied by the West on Islam and Muslims, we have refused to yield on either of these flanks. We have held, extended, and consolidated the moral high ground we alone occupy. And we have beaten our opponents back to re-examine the value at the core of their own existence. Liberalism, in my submission, has found its match. It may not survive the test we have set for it. Beyond that, we have dug deep into our political and spiritual and intellectual resources to produce a working political system that seeks to transform the condition of Muslims and permanently alter the ground rules by which we all live in this country. Our problems, Mr. Speaker, are complex. Their roots go back many centuries. They are embedded in events beyond the range of most people's immediate consciousness. One of the functions of this Parliament is to bring our historical consciousness to bear on our contemporary problems and the shaping of a future for generations of Muslims yet unborn. The Muslim Parliament is a prism that will refract light from our past and present it in the form of our future. The source of all light is the divine guidance of the Quran and the life of the great exemplar Muhammad, the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. We must therefore take our position from the Quran and the Sunnah, that is, the precepts of the Prophet of Islam. The Quran states quite categorically, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, وَشَاوِرْهُمْ فِي الْأَمْرِ فَإِذَا عَزَمْتَ فَتَوَكَّلْ عَلَى اللَّهِ إِنَّ اللَّهَ يُحِبُّ الْمُتَوَكِّلِينَ. And the translation reads, and consult them in the affairs of the moment. Then, after consultation, when you have taken a decision, put your trust in Allah. Allah loves those who put their trust in Him. Later on, the Quran again says, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, وَالَّذِينَ اسْتَجَابُوا لِرَبِّهِمْ وَقَامُوا الصَّلَاةَ وَأَمْرُهُمْ شُورَى بَيْنَهُمْ وَمِمَّا رَزَقْنَاهُمْ يُنْفِقُونَ. The translation reads, Allah's reward is for those who hearken to their Lord and establish regular prayer and conduct their affairs by mutual consultation, who spend out of we bestow upon them for sustenance. As for the example set by Allah's Messenger, He created the prototypical political manifestation of Islam. He showed us how to generate the political power of Islam in a minority situation and how to nurse and develop it until the creation of the Islamic State and the victory of Islam over all its opponents. The emphasis the Prophet placed on leadership, on organization, and on discipline may be gauged from his instruction that if 3 of you should be on journey, they must appoint one among them as their leader. The message is clear. Muslims should never be without leadership, without organization, and without discipline. Is it conceivable, therefore, that Islam should approve of 2 million Muslims living without leadership, organization, and discipline. This Parliament, collectively, and all members individually have taken up the role and duty of leadership, organization, and discipline within the Muslim community in Britain. In this sense, the roots of the Muslim Parliament of Great Britain go back to the historical experience of the great exemplar, the Prophet of Islam himself. With the inauguration of the Muslim Parliament, or strictly the lower house of the Muslim Parliament, we have set up only the base camp. The summit of our destiny is still a long way away, to some extent clouded in the mist of uncertainty. We have arrived here with very few resources, but with an overwhelming party of dedicated men and women. However, despite difficulties and a paucity of resources, we have cut no corners. No shortcuts have been taken. Hardships have not been avoided. Every inch of the road so far has been diligently covered. We have followed a rigorously scientific method. We have first produced original ideas and then tested them against the harsh realities of life in Britain. We have undertaken research followed by extensive fieldwork. We have explored non-Muslim opinion and consulted all shades of Muslim opinion. In the beginning, we faced the media. That was unanimously hostile, and many of them still are. Today, some of these skeptics have become converted. Messages of covert support have also been coming in. What is more, important and influential sources in the media have begun to show understanding and even a little admiration for our constancy and achievement. Our method has been an unflinching commitment to intellectual rigor, honesty, and openness. Already there is evidence that we have helped to raise the moral tone of British society as a whole. For example, take the debate in the House of Lords over BBC Two's plans to screen the blasphemous film, The Last Temptation of Christ. Lord Tony Pandy, a former Speaker of the House of Commons, and Lord Hailsham, the former Lord Chancellor, pointed out that the honor of the Prophet Muhammad was now protected by his followers in Britain. In their opinion, the honor of Jesus Christ ought also to be similarly protected. These similar points have been made. The BBC was forced to cancel plans to screen the film. This, of course, has caused great consternation in the liberal lobby. But by resisting blackmail, and believe you me, it was blackmail of the worst possible kind, we have deprived the liberals of one of their favorite weapons, the law. As a law-abiding people, we instinctively understand when it is right and proper to stand by our principles and let the law find its own level in the society in which we live. This brings me to consider the place and role of the Muslim Parliament in the context of contemporary British society. Where do we stand? We have called ourselves a parliament because, above all, we are a political system in every sense and meaning of that term. We want to take our place among the primary institutions of Great Britain. The inauguration of this parliament transforms the disparaged Muslim minority in Britain into a political community with a will and purpose of its own. After today, Mr. Speaker, it should not be possible or necessary for Whitehall, local authorities, and indeed the Parliament at Westminster itself to make laws or other instruments of public policy affecting Muslims without consultation with us. This Parliament will be alert to the menace inherent in such moves. We seek to develop regular consultative political and legal procedures to help legislators and makers of public policy take our views and interests into account. A time should come when such procedures will have become established and recognized as necessary for good government at all levels. It is often said that a political system has no value without power. What power does the Muslim Parliament have? If power be defined in terms of constitutional or military or police powers to coerce, then the Muslim Parliament has none. But if power be defined more broadly, including moral authority and ability to persuade, facilitate, cooperate, and if necessary, obstruct, then the Muslim Parliament already has enormous power. The nonsense that was talked about us a couple of years ago has largely died down. This is some measure of real power that we already exercise in Britain. And as anyone can see, assembled here in this great hall in Kensington today is all the proof one needs of our far-reaching influence in British society. The first concrete evidence of our influence is the fact that the lower house of the Muslim Parliament has been put together in less than 2 years. Members have come from every part of Britain and from all schools of thought in Islam. What is more, members of this Parliament are not drawn from any single section of British Muslim society. We are not all Arabic, Urdu, Punjabi, Farsi, Turkish, Bengali, Malay, and Hausa speakers. Those here today come from all linguistic and ethnic backgrounds of Muslims living in Britain. The only language common to all members of the Muslim Parliament, that is the MMPs, is English. Even more important is the fact that among us are men and women of a great variety of social and professional backgrounds. There are philosophers and academics, doctors and dentists, religious scholars and penitent Marxists, scientists and engineers, teachers and students, writers and journalists, and small businessmen, and a few tycoons as well. But above all, there are among us ordinary men and women whose only education has been through life's everyday hardships and the trials and tribulations of the first generation immigrant working classes. Thus, Mr. Speaker, the human material at our disposal is of a very high quality. This Parliament will seek to make policies to mold this material into a high-powered and disciplined machine dedicated to the pursuit of a spiritual, material, and social excellence. This means we must aim at a Muslim community with more graduates per thousand of population than the average for the country. We should aim at a strong Muslim entrepreneurial class. There is no harm in having more millionaires than any other minority community in this country. We must have a strong Muslim representation in all the leading professions. And we must make sure that the Muslim community as a whole does not forever remain at the bottom of the economic league in terms of income, savings, housing, and consumption. That these goals will be achieved, I have no doubt. For Muslims have a long record of making sacrifices today in order to build a better future tomorrow. And simultaneously, we have proved that we can also be the best moral exemplars for our fellow Britons with the best contented families, the best looked after widows, the best cared for old people, the best sheltered orphans, and so on. A time will come when every Muslim household in Britain will be on our database. When a child is born, this Parliament will hear of it. When someone passes away, this Parliament will know about it. When somebody loses his job, this Parliament will be alerted. When families or orphans fall on hard times, this Parliament will have the resources to come to their rescue. Slowly but surely, a whole network of institutions based on zakat for the uninitiated, and there are some of our guests here, means 2.5% of cash and other savings on an annual basis. And other religious dues will be created. The entire welfare system of Islam will ensure that no Muslim man, woman, or child will ever become totally destitute in this country. We will become recognized as the most caring community in this country. And a time will come when we will be able to care for Muslims and non-Muslims alike. All that we have today by way of our homes, mosques, community centers, religious schools, and the education of our children already represents the sacrifices and savings of many of the poorest, least paid, and most exploited first-generation immigrant laborers in history. We are proud to have many of them as members of this house here today. The great future that beckons us will be built on the sacred foundations of the sweat and tear of our working classes. It is one of our ambitions to make the Muslims of Britain among the most prosperous people in the country. But the prosperity of the future will be built on the sacrifices, poverty, and deprivation of those who came here to help build the British economy after the devastations of the Second World War. However, it is also important that we understand, and everybody else in this country understands, the source of our power and influence. And the source of our power and influence it is our commitment to serve and defend Islam. This source is our commitment to follow the method and example of the great exemplar, the Prophet of Islam. This source is our commitment to all-round moral excellence. This source is our commitment to serve the Muslim community in Britain and the British community at large. And this source is our commitment to turn Muslims in Britain into the best educated, most morally upright, law-abiding, and prosperous community in the land. The method by which we intend to achieve this essentially and unashamedly political goal is through the political method itself. In the secular and Western context, the term politics has a diversity of meanings and no agreed definition. But our understanding of politics in the context of this Parliament and the Muslim community in Britain is clear and precise. By politics, we mean all those activities that are designed to establish a strong Muslim presence in Britain on the basis of common citizenship, to develop consensus on major issues among Muslims, to set goals for the Muslim community, to improve the economic and social position of Muslims in Britain, and to mobilize the Muslim community's human, spiritual, and material resources in the service of the community. The nature of politics in a Muslim context is based on both personal and collective taqwa, piety. None of us is in public life for personal gain. Many of us have entered public life for the very first time because we believe that the greater good of Muslims in Britain is not only not protected, but actually in great danger of extinction if left to the mainstream of British political processes. The fact, Mr. Speaker, is that British government, all political parties, the media, the churches, and all other influential and established groups in Britain have made it clear that they regard the influence of Islam in Britain as undesirable. In some areas, the policies of the British government are openly and unashamedly unjust and discriminatory against Muslims. The government's persistent refusal to allow voluntary aided Muslim schools is an obvious example. At some stage, we might have to take Her Majesty's government to the bar of world opinion or some such institution as the European Court. We may also have to resort to symbolic forms of civil disobedience to draw attention to our plight. In this respect, we shall be engaged in the normal activities of a pressure group in British life. Members of this House and of the upper house and the numerous Muslim manifesto groups in the country will engage in intensive pressure group activities in their own areas at the local level, while the Muslim Parliament as a whole will engage in similar activities at the national level. Let us make it quite clear that Muslims in Britain will oppose and, if necessary, defy any public policy or legislation that we regard as inimical to our interests. The dictatorship of the majority dressed up as democracy is unacceptable. However, we sincerely hope that our role as a pressure group will be only a small part of our many concerns. The bulk of the work of the Muslim Parliament and its network of institutions will be concerned with the consolidation of the Muslim community in Britain into, in the language of the Quran, the best of all communities. This means that our children must be the best educated, our teenagers must be the best behaved, our adults must be the best examples of manhood and womanhood, our old, sick, disabled, the unemployed, widows and orphans must be properly cared for. This is not going to be easy. In a society whose standards of behavior is falling rapidly, it will require very hard and dedicated work to raise these standards within a small community. This will amount to swimming against the current of modern Western values. Western civilization, as I have said many times before, is the modern world's sick man. It is destined for oblivion and will eventually take its place in the same dustbin of history that has already swallowed up Marxism. Islam alone, Mr. Speaker, is the antidote to a morally bankrupt and sick world. As the Muslim Manifesto has pointed out, the Quranic remedy to enjoin good and forbid evil has to be our role in British society. In the situation of a small minority, if we are to enjoin good, we must act in association and we must mobilize and consolidate our resources. It is not enough for us to be vaguely aware of what is good and what is evil. It is not sufficient merely to have a general commonality of purpose. What is required is that all facets of the good that we seek to promote be first consolidated in the institutions of Islam established in this country. The first of such institutions in this country is this Parliament. The drive to develop and acquire power is inherent in every nature and method of Islam. In the months and years to come, proposals for new institutions to take up specialized functions and services for our community will be brought before this House. For example, the agenda proposed in the Muslim Manifesto includes the setting up of an Islamic university. A white paper on Muslim education in Britain is presently under preparation and will consider the proposals to set up the Islamic university. The fact of the matter is that we are above all else a people of the book. What this means, Mr. Speaker, is that our basic instrument of social action is knowledge. Islam lays great stress, great emphasis on the acquisition of knowledge. The Muslim community in Britain must also make its own contribution in the field of higher education and research. Our pursuit of identity and moral excellence must also be based on our own philosophy of science and the application of scientific knowledge. Islam's encounter with the West may take many forms in different parts of the world. But here in Britain, the Muslim community can contribute by contesting the West's philosophy of physical and behavioral sciences. The Islamic University will also represent the intellectual and spiritual power of Islam. While the Muslim Parliament of Great Britain may be restricted in its political role by constitutional constraints, no such constraints may hamper the work of the Islamic University. Detailed steps with proposals for the setting up of the Islamic University will be put before this House. The Islamic University's role in defining and promoting the good will be unhampered and free. Our role as forbidders of evil, on the other hand, Mr. Speaker, is more problematic. In modern Britain, many of the evils described in such revealed books as the Bible and the Quran are now upheld as virtues. Some of these evils, such as gambling, prostitution, and homosexuality, may also be protected or even promoted by acts of parliament. To oppose some of these evils might actually be illegal. In this increasingly oppressive climate of moral anarchy, Muslims must make sure that at least within our community, the frontiers between good and evil are clearly drawn and understood. Let us set an example that may one day draw deviant mankind back to its spiritual roots. These are, Mr. Speaker, uphill tasks. Our methods must be deliberative and therefore slow. For example, the white paper on Muslim education in Britain we hope to publish in a few weeks' time. It may be debated in this House in May. More detailed proposals for its gradual implementation may be brought before this House in the form of a bill later in this year. It may take us a year or more to complete work on the white paper and the education bill that might follow. This is a time-consuming process. But the time spent now will ensure that the decisions made by this House are properly debated and considered in depth. Members of this House will also have the opportunity to take the white paper and the bill for discussion at public meetings in their own towns and cities. The work of this Parliament will be meaningful only if we carry a strong and informed Muslim public opinion with us. This brings us to consider briefly the role of mosques. Our mosques, perhaps as many as 1,000 of them, are our greatest single achievement. We have invested perhaps as much as £200 million in little more than 20 years. This shows clearly that the first generation of Muslim immigrants to this country were deeply conscious of the need for Islam's basic institutions in Britain. However, these mosques have also come to represent our greatest single failure. They should have been dynamic centers of Islamic learning and social and political platforms meeting the needs of a growing and young Muslim community. Our mosques should have taken the initiative in developing an Islamic culture in Britain, offering our young men and women an alternative to disco culture. Instead, what we have are mosques that are socially, culturally, and politically dead. They offer little but ritual prayers within a setting of sectarian obscurantism. It is easy to blame the ulama and the committees that control these mosques. In fact, we are all to blame. Perhaps a two-pronged strategy is needed. First, this parliament should approach the mosque committees, trustees and ulama and discuss with them ways and means of bringing the present state of affairs to an end. Many of them, I feel sure, will cooperate. Secondly, we should launch a bold new program designed to increase the number of mosques in Britain to meet the needs of a growing community. We should make sure that the new mosques are harbingers of a new Islamic culture and centers of the Muslim community's social and political role and power in British society. Mr. Speaker, I now turn to consider, again briefly, the Muslim manifesto groups, that is the MMGs. The MMGs form a network of grassroots institutions. At the moment, they are mostly embryonic, but most have already held 2 or more public meetings. Each MMG has a core around local MMPs who meet frequently. The MMGs have the potential to develop in the role of Muslim local government in their areas, providing essential services in the field of education and general social welfare. Many of these services can be provided through registered charities managed by members of this House. Whenever possible, the MMGs should seek to work closely with established mosques and set up new mosques if necessary. The MMGs have already played a significant part in providing this House with the bulk of its members. In years to come, a more direct electoral system may be devised, still using the MMGs as electoral colleges. The same is true of the professional groups represented in this House. These are the Muslim Medical Institute, the Muslim Business Group, and the Association of Muslim Scientists and Technologists. And a very active and versatile Muslim Women's Institute now has branches in many towns and cities throughout the community. One of the great achievements of this parliament, even before its inauguration, has been to bring into public life a large number of Muslim women. So much so that no fewer than 24 women are members of this House, which is about 16%. This incidentally compares with only 7% at Westminster. Muslim women in public life have the added responsibility of nailing the lie that Islam oppresses women. This propaganda has been in the vanguard of the West's attack on Islam for hundreds of years. Now, perhaps for the first time in history, articulate Muslim women living in the West itself have the opportunity to demonstrate the place of honor and dignity they enjoy in Islam. On this issue, we have to stop being defensive and instead demonstrate that modern Western woman is among the most overworked, underpaid, and sexually oppressed, exploited, and degraded woman in history. Western woman is now just another factor of consumption, the logical end of capitalism. This House will give the Muslim Women's Institute the highest priority in resource generation and resource allocation. Already, 2 of the leading figures in the MWI are deputy speakers of this House, though I must say one of them is lost somewhere in Africa at the present time. We live in a secular society in which the pursuit of the material world alone is applauded. It is seldom realized that Islam enjoins mankind to seek and enjoy the many pleasures with which this world is endowed by its Creator. As such, and within the moral paradigm of Islam, one of the major objectives of the Muslim Parliament is to maximize the generation of wealth and prosperity in the Muslim community in Britain. We hope to pursue this goal in 2 ways. First, by encouraging more Muslim young men and women to go into higher education. The policies now being pursued by the government will increase the financial burden of higher education falling on parents. This must inevitably mean that Muslim parents, being among the poorest categories, fewer Muslims, school leavers, will go into higher education unless the Muslim community makes a conscious effort to ensure that they do. The student loan scheme is also likely to be a deterrent to Muslims from low-income families. The white paper on Muslim education will include proposals to supplement the income of Muslim undergraduates. Secondly, by inviting Muslims in the leading professions, such as medicine, law, dentistry, accountancy, engineering, and so on, to devise ways and means of increasing the number of Muslims going into these professions. The professional groups already set up have been invited to examine this issue closely and to develop relevant strategies. In the Muslim community, there has already emerged a strong entrepreneurial class. We are inviting Muslim professionals and entrepreneurs to become members of the upper house. The upper house of the Muslim Parliament will be the primary engine for the generation of more prosperity in the Muslim community. It will give men and women of eminence in our community a prestigious platform from which they shall be able to use their considerable knowledge and exercise and experience for the greater good of all. Similarly, many elders of our society will find the upper house a suitable culmination to their distinguished careers in the service of Islam. The professionals and the entrepreneurs, though relatively better off than the rest of us, are still among the disadvantaged within their respective groups. The rate of unemployment among Muslim doctors, for example, is higher than among doctors as a whole. Other forms of discrimination, even victimization, are also common in the medical profession and indeed virtually all other professions. Our entrepreneurs, too, face many difficulties in trade, banking, and industry. Even the most successful of them are often living on the crumbs that they are allowed to pick up after the big boys have cleaned up and some of them have jumped in the sea. The Muslim Parliament will give special attention to the problems of our businessmen and industrialists. With the larger European market now opening up, the opportunities, even for picking up crumbs, will be greater. We shall arrange for parliamentary trade and professional delegations to visit overseas markets. in order to open up opportunities for Muslims here and for Muslims overseas. A Muslim parliamentary trade delegation sets off for South Africa shortly. By helping Muslim entrepreneurs to become more successful, we hope to open the field of trade and industry for more Muslims. In sum, we hope to help the professionals, traders, and industrialists among us become more numerous and successful. We also expect to use those groups, their knowledge and their expertise to generate greater prosperity for the entire Muslim community. There are numerous other areas of concern that will occupy the Muslim Parliament in the years that lie ahead. Some of these have been identified in the Muslim Manifesto. I do not propose to go over that ground again today. There is only one more area I want to touch upon now. This concerns the financing of the Muslim Parliament and its programs. Let me say at once that the bulk, if not all of the finances will come, and indeed must come, from Muslims living in Britain. We estimate that there are, at a conservative calculation, 400,000 Muslim households in this country. The average industrial wage in this country stands at just over £12,000 a year. If every Muslim household is assumed to have only one wage earner, there are about £5,000 million a year coming into the Muslim community as income. This is a large pool from which to draw our resources. In the last 20 years, Muslims in this country have contributed about £200 million to build nearly 1,000 mosques. When motivated, Muslims can contribute large amounts. I feel sure that over the next 20 years, Muslims in Britain will contribute even larger amounts to build the schools and other institutions we need to secure the future of generations yet unborn. Mr. Speaker, at the same time, the Muslim community in Britain is part of a global community of Islam. We now live in a global village. Details of the financing secured by a former British Prime Minister from her friends, many of them Muslims, worldwide for the proposed Thatcher Foundation have recently come to light. It will probably have a thatched roof over its head. The British government, too, is broadening its links with Europe while maintaining its special relationship. Sometimes I wonder what is this special relationship with the United States. It is well known that we subscribe to few of the values of the West or the West's agenda for mankind. In some important and critical areas, our values are diametrically opposed and our agenda is fundamentally different. Both our values and our agenda are part of the alternative global civilization and culture of Islam. Let it be clearly understood that this Parliament shall be a platform for the promotion of the values and agenda of Islam in Britain and indeed throughout the world. At this level, our resources, physical, intellectual, and spiritual, may be drawn from all corners of the globe. In the final analysis, however, this Parliament must stand or fall on the performance of its individual members. By this, I do not mean our performance on the floor of this House or our parliamentary and debating skills. What I mean is the service we render through this Parliament to our communities. As MMPs, we must visit as many Muslim homes and families in our areas as possible. We must find the needy, the old, the sick, the orphans, the unemployed, the infirm, and the disabled and arrange whatever help we can for them. We must visit the sick in hospitals. We must visit the bereaved families and attend social events such as weddings in our communities. Similarly, the MMP should be in touch with local Muslim or Islamic organizations, the mosques, their imams. The MMPs should be a person trusted by everybody. He or she must be above petty politics between competing groups for the control of masajid, for example. The MMP must never take sides or take part in sectarian controversies. An MMP should make himself or herself known to local DSS office, the social services, the town hall, the police, the schools, and the education office. He or she should also cooperate with and whenever possible attend meetings or other functions arranged by social, cultural, and educational groups. We are not against anyone. We seek confrontation with no one. Ultimately, it is the MMG organized as the Muslim local government that is the framework within which the MMP must work and serve the community. Mr. Speaker, this Parliament must define and defend and promote the Muslim interest in Britain. It must solve those problems of the Muslim community that the mainstream political systems of the government cannot attend to. It is not in any sense a separatist body. However, the large majority of Muslims in this country are British-born. We are here to stay, and we must live as fully integrated citizens of this country. This Parliament, therefore, must iron out the problems of common citizenship. It must encourage and help Muslims in this country to play a full part in British society. And in doing so, it must raise the moral outlook of the entire society. This Parliament must, in short, become an integral and essential part of contemporary Britain. I thank you, Mr. Speaker, for your attention. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Thank you, Dr. Siddiqui. Now I'll take a few responses from the floor. Original plan was that there will be 6 responses in a row, but as the time for Zohar is drawing close, so I'll have to take a few now and the rest later. So I request Amilda Ryan from Slough to come and give a response.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Today is a day of reflection on the events and ideas that have brought us, the Muslim community in Great Britain, to this Muslim Parliament. Through the vision of those involved in setting up this Parliament, we have finally found a platform from which to shape and form our future, that of our children and of our children's children, inshaAllah. Today, we take our future into our own hands to determine for ourselves the kind of legacy we are going to leave in our wake. Part of the reason we're here today is that we have lost faith in a government which has offered only rhetoric and platitudes to our pleas for help. Yet what can we expect from a government which allows so many of its indigenous people to sleep in the streets, having only cardboard boxes for heat and comfort? What can we expect of a government which has failed to sustain an economy fit for its poor as well as for its rich? The fact is, the whole of British society today is deeply divided and deeply unjust. For the 2 million strong Muslim minority to survive and thrive in this environment, it is essential that we stand firmly and solidly for all that Islam is. This Parliament stands to represent the true aspirations, ideals and principles of Islam and its followers, rather than the imported, misrepresented, misinterpreted Islam so often portrayed. It's time to integrate not Muslims into this society, but Muslim thought politically, practically, intellectually and philosophically into our own lives and that of our community. For too long, the Ummah in this country has been disorganized and chaotic in a society which is continually fighting its own decline. Our being here today is a milestone in the lives of all Muslims and a clear sign that we are now ready to take responsibility for our own community. This community must be seen as our extended family, and we should not rest until every member of that family has at least every one of its most basic needs and at best has fulfilled all of its highest aspirations. Let me repeat Dr. Kalim Siddiqui's assertion, however, that we are not in any way cutting ourselves off from the rest of British society. We are in no sense a separatist body. Most of the Muslim community now in this country is British born. We are here to stay, and we're determined to make a positive contribution to the life of this country as a whole. In organizing ourselves, the Muslim community hopes to change the nature of British society in such a way that the entire population of this country, Muslim and non-Muslim alike, whatever their color, can benefit from the ethic of mutual caring and serving, which is so central a part of Islam. As a Muslim, a wife, and a mother, I and my sisters I'm proud of the time, the commitment and skills we utilize in tending to our families. But now we know that we must look also to the needs of our extended family, the community. We need to reach out and begin to attempt to heal the accrued neglect and hopelessness which has afflicted so many for so long. I pray that together we can fulfill the burden we've been entrusted and the hopes, aspirations of this auspicious Parliament. Thank you.
Thank you, Sister Milderam. Now I'll request Brother Ghulam Sarwar Nawaz from Rushdie to give us his response.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. Verily, never will Allah change the condition of a people until they change it themselves. This is a translation of a verse from the Holy Quran. Mr. Speaker, today, the 4th of January 1992, and the 28th of Jamadil Thani, 1412 Hijri, a new chapter begins in the lives of Muslims living in Britain. The Muslims, with the inauguration of the Majlis al-Shura al-Islami fi Britannia, the Muslim Parliament of Great Britain, we are no longer an ad hoc community. We are now a community with a mission and a destiny. This is the time that so many Muslims of all schools of thought in Islam, of all the languages of the world, and of all interests and backgrounds have come together to promote and protect the interests of Muslims living in Britain. This platform of United Muslims will help define and articulate the needs and aspirations of Muslims up and down the country. The support that the Muslim Manifesto has attracted can be discerned from looking at members present here today. These members have spent months preparing for today's historical event because the mission we have embarked upon demands of us no less. But this is only the beginning. Our community faces many problems and hurdles. Today, the talents and skills of the Muslim community are being wasted as they stroll the streets in search of employment. This is a reality and not fiction. But without the Muslim Manifesto and the Muslim Parliament of Great Britain as the driving force, the realization to change the status quo would not have come, as this does not suit the established order. We will not accept the status of an underclass. This must change. If the challenges we face are enormous, so is the commitment of the Muslims to face them. The human material at our disposal is of a very high caliber. Armed with moral excellence, the Muslims in Britain can and must radically transform the situation of the community here. Already, a new mood of confidence prevails among Muslims throughout Britain. If we look for a moment at the rapidly changing world, mashallah, Islam is again on the rise. We look at the former Soviet republics, in Algeria and other parts of the globe. Inshallah, Islam will prevail and true Islamic states will emerge as liberators of mankind. We are a people of the book who are enjoined to do good and forbid evil. This is possible only when we set our own house in order and set a good example to others. The network of institutions created by the Muslim Manifesto groups will bring together Muslims for the betterment of all members of the community. The enthusiasm with which Muslims up and down the country have greeted their deliberations is confirmation of the fact that these institutions have touched upon some of the burning issues confronting the community. With time, appropriate solutions will also be found, inshallah. The program outlined by the Leader of the House is unique. Since the publication of the Muslim Manifesto, a change in the attitude of our adversaries is also discernible. We hope that with time, our fellow citizens will realize that the presence of Islam in this country is a blessing of Allah. Assalamu alaikum.
Thank you, Brother Nawaz. Now I request Brother Ata Muhammad Ambar from Bradford to give his response, please.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Nahmaduhu wa nusalli ala rasulihil kareem. Mr. Speaker, as I stand before the August House, I cannot believe simply my eyes. Only a year ago, no one would have believed that the Muslim would have their own community parliament where people from all sectors of the community, from unemployed factory workers to professionals and scholars, would sit together to deliberate on the issues of concerning facing them. We were a collection of individuals like a heap of bricks, ready to be used against our own interests by anyone intelligent enough to exploit us. After the Second World War, Britain needed labor to rebuild the country. The empire provided a cheap source of labor. Most of us who came from the villages of the Punjab and Kashmir thought we owed it to our benevolent masters to do so. We were ex-colonials and Britain was the mother country. We worked hard, built up the country, and brought prosperity through our sweat and tears. But the more the country became prosperous, the more despised and unwelcome we became. Slowly it dawned on us that industrial society needs a permanent pool of cheap labor and a class of brainless consumers, and this where we fitted into the wider picture of the society. We now began to understand why our children did badly in schools, why our qualified young men and women did not cross the threshold barriers in their careers, and why our businessmen remained no more than retailers. But there were still issues which could not be explained away on the basis of the black and white divide. The Rushdie affair was a great eye-opener for the entire community. Until then, many of us believed that the upholders of the liberal traditions of Britain, being secular, were indifferent to matters religious and hence being fair-minded. To our surprise, they were secular fundamentalists. Having turned Christianity into a set of harmless rituals, they saw Muslim reaction a threat to their secular hegemony of society. Hence, Islam and Muslims were the target of friends and foes alike. In this great country of ours, a Muslim can be dismissed from a job for being a Muslim, and there is no law to protect him. In this great country of ours, all communities can have voluntary aided schools, but the only people who cannot have this legal right are the Muslims. Shame. To Muslims, the message was clear that unless they come together, they will remain not only a pool of cheap labor, but will soon become a rootless people. The Muslim Parliament is the first step along the long road that lies ahead in organizing our community at all levels. Mr. Speaker, the inauguration of the Muslim Parliament is a sign of maturity, the coming of age of Muslim community, and I am proud to be a part of this great event. Assalamu alaikum.
Jazakallah, brother. Now I request Brother Aslan Gaglu from London to give his response, please.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajeem. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. Mr. Speaker, since the advent of our Prophet, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, whenever we Muslims followed his sunnah and the instructions of the Holy Quran, we have been successful. It is therefore not a surprise to us that our leaders who follow this path have succeeded in their endeavors to gather us in this parliament today. If we also ourselves follow the directives of our Holy Quran and the Sunnah of our Prophet, peace be upon him, in our deliberations and work, we will make this house the most effective political tool any minority have yet designed for its political assertion. By organizing ourselves within the body of this parliament, we have reached a position of political consciousness not seen among us until now. We have reached this position because we have applied to our work Islamic discipline, selflessness, dedication, and social duty. There are many who wonder with curiosity and skepticism about the necessity of this parliament and the tasks it sets itself to achieve. In his eloquent address, the leader of the House has already raised the major issues this House will take in hand. Without entering into the individual subjects and areas of concern, I will in short describe the principal duties which befall on the Muslim Parliament. Our first and foremost duty is to raise all Muslims without exception to the status of equal citizens of this country. All and everyone should be assured that with the help of Allah, we will gain this equal citizenship status for ourselves and for the generations of British Muslims to come. Once this is achieved, however, our second and ultimate task will be to follow the example of our Prophet, peace be upon him, and set the foundations of a higher political system. A system which would follow the laws of the Quran and the Sunnah of our Prophet and would impose itself as a model for others to follow. These are surely no mean task to be burdened with. However, alhamdulillah, we are all Muslims. We will take our position from the Quran and the Sunnah, which have endowed us with infinite resources. We will also need all the assets of our ummah, human as well as material. We are sincerely confident that these assets will be forthcoming and fully mobilized to give us strength when and as needed. Mr. Speaker, no political system can survive without high moral strength, and no political system has higher moral strength than that of a truly Islamic one. To understand and bring about such a system, we all need to fully obey the Quran and to live by the Sunnah as lived by the Sahaba. Only then will we succeed in building up a truly Islamic political machine. Our parliament will then transcend all materialistic political systems and bury them in the graveyard of history. A truly Islamic political system will be then rediscovered by the Muslims at large and put into application within Darul Islam as well as Darul Harb. It will start the process of reversing centuries of old domination and damage we have suffered from the evils of imperialism and regain our self-respect, confidence, and position of leadership in this world. We have already demonstrated our exemplary position and the higher moral ground we occupy in British society. When the case of a blasphemous film about Isa alayhi salam was raised in the other parliament, we have been shown as examples to follow by some of the highest political figures in that house. However, I will not pass without saying that whilst we are and will always be within the laws of the land, we will not tolerate attacks, provocations, nor blasphemy. We have been the target of these in the past and raised successfully to the challenge. We can and will not tolerate the opportunistic liberalism which, hidden behind such slogans as freedom of expression, freedom of sexuality, freedom of behavior, freedom of artistic expression, and so on, is destroying, like a cancer, Europe's now morbid civilization to also infiltrate our faith, culture, and social behavior. It is one of the pillars of the Islamic tradition that we should always live within the boundaries of the law of the land. However, the law should accommodate the morality, decency, valor of upright and decent citizens, not the other way around. At the end of the 20th century that we are approaching, whilst a soldier is expected not to obey orders against humanity, the righteous citizens should not be expected to be bound by laws which are protecting the evil against the good, the guilty against the innocent, the powerful against the weak, the blasphemous against the believer. I will finish my words, Mr. Speaker, by wishing all the members of our Parliament, all those servants of God Almighty, in leading the British Ummah to become the best of all communities. May God help us all. Ameen.
Jazakallah, Brother Islam. Now I request Dr. Alia Kidwai from Southend to give her response.
Assalamu alaikum. Firstly, I would like to thank Dr. Kalim Siddiqui for his comprehensive speech today. As he said, the key to the Muslim Parliament is leadership, organisation, and organisation. These are concepts we do not really dwell on in daily life. However, any task is only completed successfully if leadership, organisation are present. For instance, cooking a meal requires a head chef, appropriate ingredients, and correct timing. In this country, many people live their lives on a day-to-day basis. Their main concerns are keeping up with their mortgage repayments and going down to the pub on a Friday night. We Muslims must look beyond our immediate lives. We have a duty in Islam to care for those who are less fortunate than ourselves, to tend the weak, and to use all our gifts for the benefit of others. We, as Muslims, have to be better and be more prosperous, not only as individuals, but also as a united community. The establishment in Britain has inadvertently done us a favour. It attacked the core of Islam, the honour of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, and caused the quiet, sedate Muslims of Britain to become organised, more active. Yes, that's right. Sorry. Our youth, especially in predominantly Asian areas, was becoming submerged in a strange hybrid of Asian culture, the Indian film videos and Bhangra culture. These youth are now turning towards an Islamic future in Britain. We, at the Muslim Parliament, must channel this animate resource for the good of the entire community. Having been born and brought up in this society, I have shared the conflicts many young Muslims face daily. We have a Muslim home with kufr at our doorstep. The contrast between home and school environments becomes bewildering for many a Muslim child, since a child's sole desire is to be the same as one's peers. I remember constantly being asked questions about my religion. I wouldn't go into assembly or attend religious education classes or go swimming. To my peers, Islam must have seemed a religion of don'ts. I think that there are many Muslim youngsters who see Islam in a similar light. It is very important for us to dispel negative images of Islam. Mosques should serve the whole community. They should serve men, women, and all our young people. Our children should socialise with children who have a good influence on them and have worthwhile pastimes with fun and educations as one. The third generation deserves a better deal than our generation. Women are treated negatively by the media here. Muslim women are portrayed as weak, submissive non-entities who play no active role in society. Generations of Muslim women have proved this image a fallacy. Our Muslim heritage has women such as Hazrat Khadija, Hazrat Aisha, and Hazrat Fatima Zahra, to name but a few. Today, many women have important roles in different fields of society. The traditional view of Muslim women was imposed by local cultures and traditions. It was not imposed by Islam. In some countries, where hijab is the rule, a woman works freely without harassment. We in Islam must give credit where credit is due. Our mothers have had the difficult task of raising their future generation in an alien, kufr culture. This task of motherhood is often degraded by society in Britain. This in turn has led to unhappy children and uncontented adults. We want our youth to grow up with a positive view of themselves, of their families and of their deen. I hope, inshallah, that the Muslim Parliament will strive to advance our youth and our women. That the people who built this Parliament were conscious of these sectors in our community is evident by looking around in this hall. As part of those groups, I wish to assure them that we appreciate their work for our future and are here to share the burden and the responsibilities with determination and perseverance, inshallah. Thank you.
Thank you, Sister Kidwai. Now, I request Dr. Abdul Majid Khundakar from Cleveland to give his response, please.
Mr. Speaker, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, Nahmaduhu wa nusalli wa nusallimu ala Rasulihil Kareem, Qala Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala fi kitabihi munazzalin, wa allafa bayna qulubihim, law anfaqta ma fil ardi jami'a, ma allafta bayna qulubihim, walakin Allah allafa baynahum, innahu azizun hakim. Allah, glory be to Him, the Most High says in the illuminated book, He has joined hearts, He has joined their hearts. Had you spent all that is on the earth, you couldn't join their hearts. But Allah has done it. He is mighty and wise. Brothers and sisters, we are gathered here today in the Kensington Hall, Town Hall, to celebrate the truly momentous occasion of the inauguration of the Muslim Parliament of Great Britain. What binds us together? What element? What chemia? What amalgam that binds the hearts of diverse origin together that the entire wealth of the world cannot, as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in this ayah karima. It is the blessing of taqwa, blessing of love and affection originating from taqwa that does. For the first time ever in our history, Muslims from all corners of Britain are coming together to express the will of our community. It is clear for all to observe that we represent all the different schools of thought within Islam, as well as representing all linguistic and ethnic backgrounds. Men and women from all walks of life will be able to participate in and make decisions on behalf of the Muslims of Britain. The realization that we had to take our destiny in our own hands could not have come sooner, a moment sooner. Our experience in Britain has taught us that we cannot rely on the secular liberal tradition promoted by the West. To do so could condemn our community to second-class status and would leave no room for self-improvement. We owe it to our future generations to prepare the way for the general improvement and well-being of the community. As Muslims, it is our duty and moral obligation to stand up and be counted. We must declare passionately that our cause is a just one. The task ahead of us is not easy. It is not a path for the faint hearts. The road ahead of us is hard and a long one. We must mobilize all Muslims to strive for spiritual, material, and social excellence. This can only be done by going into the community, creating a new network of institutions and meeting the needs of the community. It is our moral duty to protect the needy, the sick, the elderly, the poor, etc. All these disadvantaged groups who have no other to turn to. It is our moral duty to ensure that our young people are given the best possible start in life and are encouraged to go into further and higher education. We as Muslims should be known for our warmth, generosity of heart, and compassion for our fellow Muslims. We should be known as a community that truly cares for the moral and general well-being of our fellow Muslims. Let it not be said that we do not look after our own. By becoming political in our aims, we are letting it be known to the outside world that we are a force to be reckoned with. Indeed, it is the duty of all Muslims to be political in a world which is fundamentally hostile to their needs and aspirations. Through our own efforts, I am sure there will come a time when the Muslim Parliament will be recognized as a great authority on the Muslim community in Britain. Let us proclaim to the outside world that we are here to stay, that we will fight on behalf of our fellow Muslims, and that we will do all in our power to protect and safeguard the rights of our people. May God give us the strength and fortitude to carry through this mission.
Thank you, Brother Khundekar. This brings the first morning session of the Muslim Parliament to a close. The House is now adjourned until 1:30 p.m. Thank you.